I found myself in this situation where I felt that sort of I needed a change. That I know, and I was aware of that, but I didn't know what to do and I didn't know how to do it. And a tear actually ran out of the corner of his eye because I think that was that moment for him when he sort of said, it can't be that easy for me to just let go of that. How do I live more of my life in that inner peace space? And then very soon I worked out that I'm the one that controls my inner peace.
This conversation explores what happens when you reach a point in life where you know there's more, even if you can't quite name what that is yet. It's about the natural reinvention that comes as we grow, letting go of what no longer fits and finding the courage to choose differently. And in amongst it all, there's even a story about cooking for the Queen. Enjoy.
Am I going to be loyal and live in a lie? Or am I going to be courageous and go with my truth?
Welcome to another episode of Midlife Unfiltered. I'm your host, Margit Cruz, and I am super excited about today's guest. He is a new friend in my life and a beautiful, beautiful human. Tony Crossin is a leadership and growth coach who helps people navigate life's tougher chapters and come out the other side with more clarity, honesty, and direction. His work is grounded in real experience, supporting individuals and leaders to think differently, face what's uncomfortable, and create meaningful change that actually lasts. But there's more to Tony than what he does. He's someone who shows up in this community, in the lives of others, whether he's leading conversations that matter, creating spaces like Walk with Wisdom, or quietly giving his time to people who need it most. This is a conversation about reinvention and what happens when the life you've built no longer fits. So welcome, Tony.
Thank you, Margie. That was lovely. I sort of, struggle sometimes just to listen to those sorts of things when people are talking about me, but
Mm,
because it's normally me talking about everybody else. So thank you
yeah,
for that. That was beautiful.
it's good to be on the other end of that and the
Mm,
receiving side of it and just really feel that because that's the truth of who I see you as.
mm.
When we were talking in our pre-chat, I guess what really hit home is you have lived this extraordinary life, whether it's flying on Concords, cooking for the Queen, and yet the conversation we're about to have is reinvention. So I want to start with if someone met you today, I guess like me, that has no context, how would you describe who you are and what you do?
Great question. Let me start by sort of saying that I'm just a humble person who loves to enjoy his life and is all about helping others do the same. That's my sort of, I suppose, my purpose in life, or sort of like what guides me. You're right. I have had a very fruitful career. I've sort of been a chef most of my work in life. I got into cooking when I was very young, and I thought that was a thing that would sort of help me to just sort of find my way in terms of what I wanted to do and make a life and make a career of something that I really enjoyed doing. And like you said, I've had lots of luck. I've had lots of fortune. I've had some fantastic jobs. Throughout my life, I've been executive chef for British Airways. I've flown the world extensively.
Mm.
I came to Australia and migrated to Australia with my family back in 1995. I joined Qantas when I arrived here in Australia and was head of in-flight services for them. And again, sort of had a great career with Qantas, just changing the way they did things, sort of, from an in-flight service board up on board the aircraft. I then sort of left Qantas and decided to go back into sort of more cooking because I was sort of being drawn into more sort of management and leadership. And I was missing the cooking element of it. And I sort of began my own company. And I really wanted to combine my passions, which was sport at the time, and also cooking. So I ended up being sort of a chef for athletes, professional sort of sports people, and really carved a niche in terms of helping people understand how they could use food as part of their program to sort of build on their abilities, but also sort of extend their energies and things like that, just
Hmm.
through better eating and better food habits that I could teach them and they could understand. That sort of took me on a journey, and me and my son sort of started to work together in terms of growing a business, and we started a cooking school down in Sydney, which was a lot of fun. best 5 years of my life. I did over 500 cooking classes. I met so many people, had so many good times. I really sort of thought that was sort of like my ultimate job, because I was just so happy doing it. It was really hard work, very, very hard work, but I loved it. I became king of the kids. I used to love doing cooking classes with kids. We used to have kids cooking parties, which was a new thing that we started,
Oh,
which really took off. We would do kids cooking classes during the school holidays and pack them out. Like literally were oversold every sort of school holidays. So that was a lot of fun. And then I built my business up and it became quite successful, and somebody was interested in buying it. And then I decided that was it. I'd had enough now, and I'd sort of served my time in cooking. And so I decided that it was a time for a move. And so I moved up to Noosa and
hmm.
decided at that point to slow down. It was time for me to slow down and sort of find something else. I took a year off just to sort of reset myself more than anything else. And then I got into coaching. My son was working for a coaching company, and he engaged me as being the coach for Queensland, funnily enough. And I worked for this company, Up Coach, for about 5 years, just learning coaching. I got qualified, certified, all those sorts of things. Had some really good experience in the business coaching
Hmm.
space, which was really a good area to cut my teeth, so to speak, from coaching. And then as I do, I got sort of too heavily involved in it, and I was ending up working 60, 70 hours a week again, which was not slowing down. It was sort of
No.
speeding up again. And so it was time to sort of, leave that and just do what I wanted to do. So I, again, sort of built my own coaching company and started to sort of find people that I wanted to work with, that I
Mm,
wanted to coach. And, that was what really got me into that sort of coaching space. And that's sort of a little bit where I'm at now. I've also worked for another company doing leadership facilitation, which I really enjoy. It's really like the best part of my world at the moment, is just helping, I say, good leaders turn to great leaders just
yeah.
by understanding what leadership is and giving them some tools and some information to help them just understand how they can become great leaders just
Yes.
with that information. So yeah, that's been my story so far.
That's the truth about leadership, isn't it? Really working out what it is and what kind of leader you want to be. I think it's such a valuable conversation and it's got a lot of airtime at the moment. Like there's a lot of talk around leadership and different styles and know yourself and do all the profiles and all those sorts of things as well. So if I was to ask you, how would you describe who you are now? I know that's like it's a big question.
Yeah.
What would your answer be to that now?
I suppose now I'm somebody that sort of he's really about looking at the wisdom and the knowledge that I've gained, and I'm more sort of about helping people understand what I know, or what I've seen in my life. So I've become sort of somebody that wants to not only help people to grow and to understand or see different perspectives, but just to maybe enjoy their life, like I
Mm,
enjoy mine, and it's
yeah.
just sometimes I see so many people, Margie, that are just stuck, or they're lost,
Yep.
or they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I was that person, I was stuck, I was lost, I didn't know what to do, and I needed help. And so I've sort of shaped myself into being one of those people that helps people
Mm,
get unstuck,
yeah.
find themselves or reinvent themselves to be somebody different from who they have been into somebody who they want to be moving forward.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because our past does not have to dictate our future. And that's what I love about that reinvention piece is we can take all that we've learned, but we can actually completely turn and change and go in a different direction if that's what we want. Right.
Yeah. I found myself in this situation where I felt that sort of I needed a change. That I know, and I was aware of that, but I didn't know what to do and I didn't know how to do it. And so that whole element of reinvention really started to sort of kick in for me. But what I discovered was, and I thought about this whole midlife crisis, like that's what's happening here, and that's why I love this podcast, because it sort of is just sort of everything about what I think about and talk about as well. But what I thought was, it's not about a new shiny car, it's not about a new wardrobe, it's not about
Yeah.
losing weight, it's none of that. What it actually is it starts from the internal aspects first. It starts from within. And if you can start to shape that and you start to change that, then the outside parts follow, and what you need, or what you want in your life, will then start to manifest. It will start to happen. But if you haven't worked out the inside part first, then it's going to be always something that you're chasing. It's always going to be something that you're trying to sort of find along that way. So yeah, that was a real sort of aha moment for me, in
Yeah.
terms of like realizing that more than anything else.
Yeah, it's when we stop looking on the outside and we start looking on the inside for our answers, or even just, we live in a fairly hedonistic society in reality. And when we can kind of become more aware of that and then look inwards rather than
Yeah.
outwards, then the change really happens. So I'm curious, in the work that you do, what do you see? What sort of shifts do you see when someone truly sees themselves clearly?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I like the way that sort of there's an element of clarity around that, and I think of people that I've worked with recently. A very good friend of mine now, a guy called Themis, he I found him really stuck, and it was almost sort of like he was lost in the forest and just couldn't see where to go. Whereas I had a bit more of a helicopter view of what was
Mm,
going on with him. And I could sort of see where he was in the forest, and I could see where he needed to turn and what he needed to do in order to sort of find his way out of there and find something new that might sort of be where he wanted to go. And I didn't want to force him to do that. I wanted him to find his way out, but it was about helping him see maybe another perspective, maybe just let go of some of that he was holding on to,
yeah.
that was dragging him back or not allowing him to set himself free in order to get really what he was looking for. I think that moment when he did let go of something. If he ever listens to this story, he will laugh, because on his dining room table where we were sitting was a big jar of pickles, like the dill pickles, that big jar of
Yeah.
pickles. So I said to him, "I want you to hold this, Themis." I said, "And I want you to grip it really tight with both hands." And I said, "Here's the deal with you, Themis." I said, "You cannot put this jar of pickles down until you let go of what you're holding on to. And because you may not see that this is holding you back, but everybody around you, including me, can see that this is the thing that you need to put down, let go of, and then you will move forward. But you need to hold this jar of pickles for the rest of your days if you're not prepared to let that go, because that's what it looks like to everybody else. And you might start to see how that feels for you." And a tear actually ran out the corner of his eye, because I think that was that moment for him when he sort of said, "It can't be that easy for me to just let go of that and just sort of put that aside in order for me to actually see my life differently and
Mm,
embrace what I really want, what I'm really passionate about, and start taking small steps towards that." And that to me was sort of like one of those moments that it feels really good for me, because
yeah.
it's just helping people see that new perspective, or just take that leap of faith that says, "Hey, I'm just going to try this and see if it works."
Yeah.
And, you know, I talk with him every week. He's a lovely man. He's gotten himself a new job. He's almost gotten himself a new life, and he's happy, and he's connected again. He's engaging. He's becoming more social. He's starting to live his life,
Yeah.
whereas I could just see him sort of going into this really tight shell that he was locking himself into. And that wasn't the man that, I knew could be.
Yeah.
So to bring him out of that was just fantastic.
It's really interesting because, people listening will go, "I'm going to go and buy a big jar of
Sure.
pickles, right? And I'm going to hold the pickles and see if that helps me let go." And so this is, I mean, anyone that sort of knows me knows I'm a huge advocate of coaching. I've been a coach for
Mm,
21 years myself, and
mm.
it's the space that we manage to create that then allows the pickle. I love that it's a pickle jar, because we use that
It is.
language of I'm in a pickle. But
Yeah.
I love that kind of that analogy. It's sort of perfect. But yeah, if we think about, it's when we've got that support from someone else that shares that space, that truly gets us, that truly can see there's something within us that understands that this is this is something I'm holding on to and I'm scared to let it go, but I know this is a safe place to do that. And that is something really special that we get to be a part of as a coach.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think I think the other thing is, I caught up with them this last week and went round his house and we were sitting there having a chat. And he said to me, "I want to show you something." And in the corner of the room, tucked away, is a jar of pickles, but it's empty. There's no pickles in it. There's just the vinegar in the bottom of it. And he says, "I just can't throw it out." He said, "because it's just such a reminder of me in my new life." He said, "I take it out and I pick it up and give it a little shake now and again. I put it down and know that I'm letting go and I'm moving forward," which I thought was lovely.
It's lovely, but it's a double-edged, right? Because it's a letting go. It's a different letting go.
It is.
I've got to let go of the space where I let go,
Yeah, it's really good.
in order to create space for, well, I am gonna say the flow.
Mm.
So what else comes in? So I know that you speak about reinvention and you work in that area, and you don't do it in that light, let's just call it that Instagram way. So something shifted for you in your life, and I'd love to hear more about what happened there.
Yeah. I think I'm going to say a few years ago now, Maggie, I was sort of in a bit of a situation where my life wasn't going where I wanted it to go. I wasn't
Mhm.
very happy. I was on the edge of depression, I think, more than anything else. And I wouldn't say it was diagnosed depression, but I didn't feel good. I knew that. And I knew that a change happened to happen for me in order for me to sort of start living my life and enjoying my life the way I wanted to. And so I really needed to have a look at what that looked like for me and then what I needed to do in order to bring about that change. And I'd spent a fair bit of time analyzing what I needed to do and how I needed to do that. And I came across this sort of aspect of my life that said, I need to make some decisions here, big decisions about, how I'm going to change my life. And I was in that period of my life where I'm going to say my identity was changing.
Mhm.
The identity
Yep.
that I'd created over the last, I don't know, 50, 60 years or whatever was no longer serving me. It wasn't sort of a fit for what I wanted to do moving forward. So creating a new identity, I think, is quite tough, for
Mhm.
anybody. And
Yeah.
I think that's where we get stuck. We don't know who we want to be or what we're going to be or who's going to like us if we do create this new identity. And so there was a lot of fear around that. There was a lot of, will people judge me? Will people still
Mhm.
talk to me, like me, or whatever? If I do this, is that going to work? So I got quite sort of stuck in all of that procrastination around the right and the wrong and the fear and all of those sorts of things that was sort of associated with that. But I knew there were some big calls, for me coming up in my life, and one of those was to move out of the relationship that I was in.
Mhm.
I was stuck in a very toxic relationship, and I had been for many, many years.
Mm.
My partner was an alcoholic, and I prayed that one day that something would happen, that would all just change, and we would go back to who we both were, all those years ago. But that wasn't going to
Mm.
happen, and so I couldn't sort of allow myself to be dragged down any longer. So I had to make the call, and it was, I'm going to say, the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, I can understand that too.
It was really, really tough. Like it was the toughest decision I've had to make in my life. But I knew it wasn't going to be easy for me. I knew I was going to be lonely. I knew I was going to, struggle, through that period because I didn't have an identity that wasn't sort of in a marriage or, in a partnership. That was a tough time for me, but I knew that it was the right thing for me to do. My instinct, my gut, everything, my heart was telling me that you're not going to go forward unless you do this.
And I think there's lots of people who know that, who know, like, I want to change, but they don't necessarily have the courage to be able to do that. So, what did you lean on to find that courage for yourself to make the change? Because it ultimately changed your entire life.
Yeah, it did. And I think sort of there were a couple of things that I sort of looked at. And one of them was around, and this is quite challenging, for me, I would say, Maggie, is that I looked at loyalty versus truth.
Mm,
Right. So
yes.
I'm really big on loyalty.
Yep.
I always have been all my life. But I also had to compare that against truth. which was the stronger one here? Am I going to be loyal and live in a lie, or am
Mm.
I going to be courageous and go with my truth?
Well, am I going to be loyal to someone else or a relationship over the loyalty to myself, right?
Yeah,
But it still takes the courage to, we can do all that theoretical work. It's then, moving it into practice. That's the hard thing, right?
it is.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I can think all these amazing things, but then, oh, I've got to go and take a bit of action.
And I tried to take action for many years,
Yeah.
and said, I'm doing this, but I never did. But then I did. And I think the thing for me, Margie, was lots of people around me were telling me, you need to do this. You need to
Yeah.
do this. But it wasn't helping me. It had to come from me. I wasn't going to do this because my friends were telling me I should do it. I needed to do it because it felt right for me. And I felt that if it was good and right for me, that I would stick with it. I would then pursue,
Mm,
what was really right for me, what that truth was in everything that I did. And that courage, that you talk about, that leaning in to sort of knowing and being honest with yourself is really what brought about that change. As
mm.
tough as it was, I knew that it was still right. And I still believe to this day that that was the right thing to do for both me, but also, my ex-wife as well. It was never going to be a relationship where I could see me being happy.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that wasn't something that I could honestly live with myself. I couldn't live that lie. I couldn't allow myself to just be dragged down into that.
No, and do you know, I have this deep belief that when we do what's right for ourselves, it's actually right for the whole. We
Absolutely.
often get caught up in this idea of, oh, we're being selfish or we're only thinking about me. And in fact, what happens is that somehow it turns out to be what everyone needed. But it's really hard to sort of see that, particularly in something like a relationship breakup, particularly when that other person has some sort of addiction, that can be really difficult. So I'm curious if we sort of look at that, what did you not see at the time that you can see now?
Yeah, I think it was an element around I thought I could change somebody. I
Mm.
honestly thought that I you know, could change somebody's way of thinking, way of dealing with their life that would serve mine, that would be better for me. And and that to me was a real wake up call after the event. It was only
Yep.
after the event that it happened. And I was like, that was never going to happen. I should have done this a long time ago because I've been trying to change something that I could never change, and that built a lot of frustration, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress with me because I want this, this has to happen in order for me to be happy. And I was like, no, this needs to happen for me to be happy. And that's an easier path for me to control rather
Mhm.
than trying to control something that I have no control over.
Yeah, yeah. When we look at those things that we can control, those things we can influence, and those things we have no control over, and us wanting something for someone else doesn't mean they want the same thing. And it's a hard thing to admit, though, as well. Like, and if you talk about that loyalty piece that you talk about, you didn't go into getting married with this thought that, well, if it doesn't work out, I'll get divorced. You went in that for life.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did that experience change the way that you see yourself?
One of the things that I sort of took from it, and I'm still learning from that now, is this element of belief in yourself and trust your intuition, trust what
Mm,
what what your body is telling you. Your mind can mess it up a little bit, but your body knows instinctively. You know what's right and wrong. And I think that was sort of one of the things that I've really tapped into since that time is to go with what instinctively feels right for me. Doesn't matter what anybody else is saying on the outside. I will listen to advice, but advice doesn't really change us.
mm,
What really changes us is when we change our belief. When we believe something, that's when we change. And so I believe that this was something that was going to, be better for me. And therefore I did what I needed to do in order to make that happen. I didn't believe that before. I think I was
Yeah.
believing everybody else. I wasn't believing my own sort of intuition, my own
Yeah.
insights around that.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that, with all of what you just said about intuition. And I find it really interesting because I think intuition is something that we hear a lot of women talking
Mm,
about and sort of leaning into and starting to trust. And so I'm really curious about your experience. Obviously, you're a male, and obviously, you don't know what it's like to be a female, but the development of intuition in a world that doesn't necessarily say, hey man, you should you should learn to listen to your intuition. But what that journey has been for you.
yeah. I think that, some of the other things that I've learned, and this has sort of been through part of the coaching, but also part of the leadership things that I've been doing is that men are great fixers.
Mhm.
We want to fix everything,
Yep.
that's our job,
Yeah.
that's what makes us feel good. But what we don't do is take that time to process enough before we actually jump in and fix. And what we tend to do is sort of lead more with our head than our heart. That's generally sort of what I see. So part of what I've been doing is digging a little bit deeper, and certainly, the work that I've been doing around sort of self-awareness, becoming more aware of myself, who I am, my thoughts, feelings, emotions, those sorts of things. And that to me has really sort of been an adventure, I'm going to call it, to
Mm.
just sort of explore that. And I've had some great mentors. Our good friend Paul Francis, he has been honestly sort of one of my best mentors, best champions that I could ever ask to come into my life.
Yep.
I've been on a ship of thoughts journey with him, and we've done that together for the last 5 or 6 years. And I credit him, but I also credit that program for really helping that self awareness element for me, is
Mm.
to be able to look at those things that have come up for me that I've never really delve deep enough to understand or explore or even try to sort of use that in a way that was going to help me do what I needed to do for myself more than anything else. One of the things that, I always sort of talk to Paul about is, the thing that I really got from that sort of ship of thoughts thing was Paul talked about this internal guidance system.
Mhm.
And it was
Mm.
listening to that intuition. And there were three things. There's an alarm bell, a padlock, and a reward gong, he calls it. They're the three things, right? And when first Paul introduced this to me, I said, I've never heard an alarm bell ring in my life, like, what's that? Honestly, Margie, I can't tell you. From that day onwards, all I could hear was this ringing. And it got
Mm.
louder and louder and louder, and I was like, that's what you're talking about,
Mhm.
that warning sign, that ringing is a warning sign telling me something's not right. And I've really tapped into being able to listen to that as a guide for me to say something's not right. You need to do something here. And just that awareness has changed my life. It has honestly changed my life.
Mm. And if we think about it, and I am not going to say that this is you, but if you think about typically as a chef, and particularly a high level chef, there's a fair bit of ego involved. And so this change, I mean, it's definitely some sort of mellowing, of
Mm,
course,
yeah.
but there's such a massive shift of, and this knowing that, yeah, I've been operating from ego for probably quite a long time. And now I'm ready for something more and a different way of life. And what I can really say, and one of the things I love about you is I do genuinely see you enjoying your life. And if I think about my stepfather, who I've talked about on the podcast before, he reached
Yeah,
the age of 100
he did, yeah.
and he just passed away in January. But it was the thing he used to say a lot was, I
Mm.
enjoy my life.
Mm.
And I have no doubt that that was part of the reason that he lived such a long life.
It made me smile when I heard that, when you said it, because, I said, my life purpose is to enjoy my life and help
Mm.
others do the same.
Yeah.
So I like helping people. I like to serve. I like to
Mm.
connect, all of those things. And I love my hobbies. I've worked out what makes me feel good. And I have this other little analogy that my previous mentor, sort of before Paul, Greg, he taught me about how to use a compass.
Mm.
And this word is one of the strongest words that I use sort of in my life, I'm going to say, and it's called alignment. And
Yes.
what he taught me, Margie, was there is a north. And if you're heading north, go north. And when you go north, you will feel it. It will feel like you're doing what you're supposed to do. You will be in alignment with your life's purpose. You will be enjoying what you do, and keep heading that north on that compass. If you find yourself slipping northwest or whatever, or northeast, he sort of said, like, you will feel it. You will definitely feel that. And so bring that back in and find a way to align yourself. And if you're not finding joy in what you're doing, stop.
Yep.
Find some joy in that. And even when I met you in the early days, you talked this word to me. You said that you were on this mission. You have a product called the Joy Rebellion, and I was like, "Oh my God, I've met my queen. I've met my Joy Queen." And I couldn't wait to jump onto that program, and I loved it because everything that you said, everything that you got me to do throughout that program helped me to understand what joy was in my life. And
Mm.
I saw it completely different, from there on. And again, I credit you for that. I credit Greg for that, Paul for that. These people have brought, so much into my life that's made me find joy in my own life. That's the thing.
Yeah, and I think that's the real truth of it too, is that uh, it's not one person or one thing that changes everything. I know there's so many people who seem to be looking for, I think we call it the magic blue pill or the
Yeah.
key, the key,
Yeah.
what's the secret that we have to
Yeah.
unlock, and it's not. It's all the things that we do across our life that
Yeah.
add up to us and how we show up and who we are. So
Yeah.
let's get down to a couple of coachy things. So
Yeah.
if someone's listening to this and they're like, "Wow, yeah, I do want to make some change," how do you sort of start to begin again when everything's feeling uncertain?
The thing for me about coaching was when my son first sort of said to me about being a coach, I sort of stopped for a minute and thought, I don't know nothing about coaching. And, and yet, he said, no, you've been a coach all your life, Dad.
Mm,
You've coached us, as kids, you've coached everybody around you, like all the people that have worked for you, all the jobs that you've had, you've always been in that coaching role. They said, all we're going to do is formalize that a little bit now. And so I thought, hey, this is sort of something that I can slip into. And I thought this is going to be a great job. I'm going to earn money, I'm going to, meet nice people or whatever. The amazing thing, honestly, the most amazing thing was it was exactly what I needed for me.
mm,
I needed, to see this differently. I needed to see me differently. And the coaching really brought that into my life, you know, because what I was seeing were all these people that I was giving advice to. And yet that was exactly the advice I needed to be giving to myself. I remember Paul, me and Paul sort of were trying to sort of get into the coaching space together. And Paul came up with this great concept of a little hand mirror, like a little,
Yep. Yep.
handheld mirror. And we both agreed that this was the best tool that we could give anybody because what they saw in the mirror is the person or the
Mm,
thing that is going to help
yes.
them the most get what they want and how they need it. And that hit me pretty hard, when I first saw that. I thought, wow, that is a piece of gold, for
Yeah.
anybody if they can see that having that awareness or having that, understanding of their ego or just their openness, their willingness to just listen and learn and do something different.
Mm,
I think that was sort of like the challenge for me was how do I find a way in which I can do that for myself, but also how do I then help others in that
yeah.
space? And my coaching style, I think, is maybe a little bit, I'm going to say different to others because I do go with that intuitive feeling that I have. And if I feel that something needs to be said, I will say it because I will help somebody, dig deep with that because I think that's the way that we get change. And sometimes, and I've read lots about this in terms of some of the biggest challenges is where we have our biggest growth. So If I need to challenge you, I know that you're growing. I know that sort of that's something that you need to look at or work on, or work with me to help you actually see something, a different
Mm.
perspective or a different way that's going to make a shift. Because I think when you make that shift is when you get the most out of not only coaching, but out of your life as well.
Yeah, I know. I know how much coaching changed my life. And it's that thing, it sort of opens your eyes. And once your eyes are opened, you can't go back. It's like, I'm here. Oh, I can't unknow what I
That
now know.
Yeah. That revelation, I've, just spent the last couple of days working with some people, in a workshop sort of environment. Um, and the amount of light bulbs I saw come on just in those people, just with, things that they'd never seen before. One of the things that we teach is the concept of above and below the line, which is, it's out there, but we teach it to people, and not a lot of people are familiar with it. But I think about myself and go, I only saw this 3 years ago.
Yeah. Yep.
And now I love it, and I talk it and I explain it to people and I help them understand what it is and how it works, because I never knew that there was a line, and
Yes.
I knew that I was way below that line for a big part of my last 10 years. That was where I was living. And now I know how to live my life above the line. My
Yeah.
life is so much better. And I know people that do live down in that space.
Yeah. And it's interesting because while a lot of people don't conceptually sort of think about that there's a line, you still know which side of the line you're living on if
Yeah.
someone talks to you about it.
Mm,
So
yeah.
if you think back to who you used to be, like when you were a chef and you're traveling the world and then you were in this relationship that you had to leave, what did you have to let go of about yourself that was hardest to release?
I think it's the ego part of it that says
Mm,
that I'm right and you're wrong, and I think, that's the definition that I have of ego. It's just that, you know, in this situation, I know more than you, or I'm better than you, or I know that I'm right.
yeah.
To actually let go of that, to sort of go, I don't know everything. And maybe there might be something I'm not seeing here. Maybe I am not, as smart as I thought I was. Maybe I'm not as clever as what, others are. What about if I just stop and process that rather than react to that straight away? And I think that was again, one of those moments, that I sort of said, okay, stop reacting,
Yeah.
regulate your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions. Just take a deep breath. Just step back and look at what else could be in this situation. And I think
Mm,
that sort of is one element that sort of made me more of a milder, calmer, relaxed human being in terms of sort of going, yeah, I'm not a fighter, I'm a lover. It's sort
yeah.
of like I just took that sort of approach to it and go, yeah, if that's what you see, if that's what you believe, that's fine. I'm okay with that. I don't have to argue with that. I don't have to challenge that. I can share something with you that might help you maybe just see it differently. But if that's who you are, that's what you are. Great. But this is who
Yeah.
I am, and I want to stay here. One of the other things I think that was really important for me is I did some work around values and just what my values were, because that really helped me get some clarity and certainty about my identity and what it was. And this was quite profound, really, because the thing that I came up with as my number one value is inner peace. And it kept coming up. It kept coming up all of the time. If you'd have asked me 10 years ago, I would have said, oh, money or things, toys, big house, all of those sort of things. And now I've moved to inner peace. And I think the realization that I got from that, Margie, is when you're in that inner peace, when everything is calm, if you're in I'm going to say a meditative state, or you're nice and peaceful around something, that is such a beautiful, wonderful feeling. So how do I get more of that?
Yeah.
How do I live more of my life in that inner peace space? And then very soon I worked out that I'm the one that controls my inner peace, and I allow that noise to come in. I'm the one that controls that.
Yeah.
I have all of the shut off valves. I can close my eyes. I can shut my mouth. I can do all of those things. I don't have
Mm,
to allow any of that in. And I made some changes in my life just to test it, to see if it would help my anxiety, helped my stress, helped the way that I spent my days, my time, and also helped my focus as well. And I stopped going on social media. I stopped listening to
Mm,
the news. I
yes.
stopped listening to the radio. I don't watch TV. I'll watch a movie or something that interests me, but I'm not into all of this noise that I have no control over, because it was just filling a space in my head that I needed for other things in terms of me and my
Mm,
life and finding joy. And that was a big change for me. And I remember doing a talk at the Walk of Wisdom that was about, self waterproofing. How do you lock all of that stuff out? How do you stop it coming in so that
yeah.
you don't get disturbed or disrupted or distracted by any of that sort of noise that you don't need? And I've spoken to lots of people to help them try and, just block out the noise to live a more peaceful,
Yeah.
calm life.
Yeah, and if we look at just the rates now of anxiety and depression, uh, they are escalating, like seriously escalating all over the world, particularly in first world countries. But they escalate in proportion to the amount of social media and media generally that we're
Yeah.
consuming. And it's really
Mm.
interesting that a lot of people are using that as a distraction
Mm.
from even sort of finding that inner peace or even thinking about inner peace, right? Just scroll, scroll, scroll. I don't have to feel anything because I'm scrolling and I'm entertained
Yeah.
as opposed to being present with who I
Mm.
am.
Yeah. But I think sort of, I bumped into you last week and I was listening to your talk around sort of
Yeah.
your all walks, and I ride my bike, and I love getting out riding on my bike, and I love that tranquility that's just me and my bike. And
Yes.
I'm out riding in the trees, and I'm just enjoying this beautiful place that we live in. And that to me is that inner peace, and nothing disturbs that. It's amazing.
Yeah, I agree totally. And I want to be really mindful for those people who are listening is if you're not feeling that sense of inner peace, is to do exactly what you're talking about. Find some little ways for yourself, but don't get down on yourself for not finding it because I know in my own life, and I guess particularly in the last 18 months, that has been probably the hardest thing for me to find. And there are times in our lives and challenges that we get thrown that do make it more difficult, but it's about just those little things and finding that journey and finding the way back to a sense of inner peace. And that in itself is just it's such a valuable, valuable journey for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love being in that place. It is
Mm.
just such a lovely place to just be in your head. Even just sitting in the car driving without any music, just being okay with yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's the big piece, isn't it? Being okay with yourself and accepting who you are, because this comparison thing that we see now in society, it's just we think we have to keep up or we have to be different to who we are. And for me, I just think humans are genuinely amazing. And I'm like,
So,
just be you. There's
yeah,
no one that needs to be you other than you. Just be you.
yeah,
So I want to ask you a little bit, of course, about Walk with Wisdom, because Walk with Wisdom has been one of those amazing things for me in my community that has really helped me connect with. I really say find my tribe a bit.
mm,
So Walk with Wisdom is a weekly walk up here in Noosa, and it started with four of you who decided to get together and do this. Can you give me a little bit of background on this? Because I mean, I'm going to say if you listen to this and you go, "Wow, I love that," have a think about doing something similar in your area because it's amazing.
definitely. And so it started really with probably Paul, Nikki, and myself. In terms of, we used to walk the national park, we used to walk
Hmm.
along the river, and we just used to, I suppose, coach each other. We would help each other. We would have these conversations of just walking side by side. And I think we got to the stage where we said, we're fed up with walking with each other. We've shared enough wisdom. Could we expand this? And our initial thoughts were, what if we got more coaches? What if we got some doctors, some lawyers, some experts, some chiros, anybody, a dentist to join our group?
Mm.
What else could we learn? What other things could we bring into this space that would help us become wiser or just understand things differently? And Mike came in and he sort of joined the team. He was a coach as well. And then the four of us sat down and we basically had a coffee at Acres up here in Noosa, and we brainstormed how we could bring this to life. And I based it on the concept of parkrun. You know,
Yes. Okay.
the concept of that is it's a free event. You don't
Yes.
pay. It's a community event where people show up and they just do their thing. And it's exercise. It's a great community. It's a challenge, but you get so much from that. And so I took that as a model and said, why don't we create this as a walking group? We've got a
Mm.
beautiful setting. Everybody
Yep.
wants a bit of exercise. Everybody wants connection. Let's put the phones down and let's just find how we can connect with people. And it started from there. And we started walking, the four of us, and then there was 8 of us, and then there was 10 of us, 20 of us, 30 of us. And so it just grew. And it's such a beautiful community that we've sort of
Mm-hmm.
crafted. And people come and go. You don't have to turn up.
Yep.
There's no membership. There's no nothing. If you want to walk with somebody, if you want to have a conversation, if you want to learn something about something maybe you don't know much about, then this is what the walk was designed to do. And again, I've walked with some beautiful people, some
Yeah.
amazing people. I've heard some fantastic stories. I've learnt so much just from the people that have come into this community and just shared their wisdom, shared their knowledge, and had a conversation. You know, that's what it's been. I've made
Yeah.
some great friends, including yourself and lots of other people that I'm just connected with here in Noosa.
I love that we pair off with often with someone different who we've never met before, and you go for a walk, but then sort of 3/4 of the way through that, we stop and someone gives a talk. So you've got this element of people developing new skills in learning how to speak in public, but sharing their story, sharing what they do. And I always find it's just such an interesting and eclectic group. And you hear about all sorts of wild and wonderful things.
Yeah. And I've done a few talks, and you've
Hmm.
done talks as well, and I really enjoy them. And I challenge myself to bring something that I know I have had a significant learning from, or got a deeper understanding of,
Mm.
just of doing that. And I will put myself out there, challenge myself to do something that will bring something different, you know, to that community, that will help them see something. And I'm seeing that a lot of people are doing the same. You know, we don't want people to come and sell. It's not about
Yes.
selling. we're not
No.
we're not interested if you've got a book to sell or you've got a program to sell. What we want to know is, how will this talk help me? How will it help
Yes.
me understand, learn, or think about something that I never knew or understood before?
Yeah. Yeah. And I always find it does. And a lot of that has to do with the way that you listen. Right? You
Mm,
listen with curiosity and be interested in who you're with and who you're walking with and what their
yeah,
story is.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
And as you know, we've taken it on stage as well. So that was sort of a big leap for us to say, let's do like a TED Talk type of event where we can put these people on a stage and get them to experience what public speaking really is. Because we might get 30, 40 people show up on a Friday morning, but when you've got an audience of 125 people, you're taking it to a whole new level. And we've done a few of these events now. We've got another one coming up next month where we will invite sort of 5 local people who we know have got valuable wisdom and to share with the community. And we challenge them to come up with an inspiring talk that will connect, engage,
Mm.
and provide some insights, some wisdom to people that they can take away and go, wow, you know, that was really good. I really learned something from either what that person has lived and experienced themselves, or just something that they know. It can be as
Yeah.
simple as something like that.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm looking forward to the event, I must say.
Yeah.
So I wanna go to somewhere completely different.
Yeah.
I wanna take you back, to when you used to cook for the Queen, because this is something that is really, really different. I want you to tell me a little story about what that was like, what that experience was like for you.
I was passionate about cooking, but I was always passionate about sort of aircraft and just flying. And I wanted to be a pilot when I was a boy. You know, I lived near an airport and I used to love watching the planes take off and, you know, all that sort of thing. But I suppose I was never I'm going to say, clever enough to sit and do all of the study that was required to become a pilot. So I got into cooking, and I eventually found my way into airlines, which was wow, like I'm close now. I'm getting much closer to sort of this flying thing. And I worked for an airline catering company, and I worked for them for 7 years to understand sort of my skills and what I needed to do. But then I had an opportunity to join British Airways, and this was me getting very close now. And I was like, wow, this is, in the UK, it was the airline that everybody was looking to.
Yep.
And I joined I joined the kitchen crew. I was part of the kitchen team. There were over 400 people that worked in the kitchen in this place. And
Wow.
it was a big operation. We did 33,000 meals every day, every
Woof.
day.
Whoa.
Yeah. And it's huge. It's a massive, massive operation. And like I said, I was one of that team, but I was only there for a very short time before I got, I'm going to say, pushed into a role where I was like production manager, executive chef. I was running the show basically in the kitchen, which again was a dream come true for me. And about 4 or 5 days after that, I got the opportunity to fly on Concorde. My boss said to me, "Hey, I need you to go and just give me a review of your day tomorrow." And I didn't know what it was. But as I walked out of his office, he said, "I need you to show up at the airport tomorrow," he said, "and just go to New York and come back." And literally, I flew.
Wow.
The next day, I jumped on Concorde and I flew to New York, and I had 4 hours in New York, flying around in a taxi, seeing all the sights. I'd never been to New York before. So it was just like, wow, 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 wow. And then I flew back on Concorde and arrived back at sort of 6 o'clock that evening. And it was probably one of the best days of my life that I sort of really remember. But part of my job, part of my role was to make sure that we looked after particularly sort of dignitaries that sort of were on flights
Mm-hmm.
that required sort of special attention. And British Airways was the appointed caterer for the Queen and the royal family whenever they traveled, particularly internationally. But
Yep.
we would look after them and make sure that everything was taken care of. And often, if the Queen and the royal family were traveling, they would section off the first class area of a 747, and it was exclusively for her use. They would rip out all the seats. They would put in just
Wow.
her special seat. Yeah, and a bed. They would put a bed in there as well for her to sleep if she needed to sleep. So it was a big thing. It was a huge thing.
Yeah.
But there were only four of us that were commissioned to actually, I'm going to say, serve the Queen when it came to her food. So there were protocols that we needed to follow in terms of how the food was sourced, how it was
Mm-hmm.
prepared, how it was cooked, how it was packaged, how it was secured. In terms of, we would have to stay with that process the entire way through.
Wow.
We would need to make sure that somebody was sampling that. So somebody from the royal entourage was there as a bit of a, I won't call them a test rat, but they had to eat it the day before the Queen did, just to make sure that there was nothing that was going to happen with it. But it was a very sort of tight process. And I say we went to Buckingham Palace to learn what to do and how to do that. And there were only four of us in the kitchen that were signed or approved to do that process. So if the Queen came to, let's say, Australia and New Zealand, the four of us would have to travel on that journey beforehand to make sure that everything was ready for her flight when it left Sydney to go to New Zealand, or when it left New Zealand to go to Papua New Guinea, and then Papua New Guinea back to Singapore. We just followed her around, making
Wow.
sure that everything was done according to all the rules, all the security that was required to make that happen. It was a fabulous job, I've got to tell you, because we were treated like royalty wherever we went because it was really special. So,
Yeah. Be
um,
nice to the chefs.
absolutely, absolutely. But
Wow. What an extraordinary experience.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
did get to meet her once. She was sort of flying out of an Air Force base, and we had gone and taken all the food and had it all prepared. And they said, "Oh, Her Majesty's arriving in the next 15 minutes. You can stay and join the line that stood there before she got on the plane." We were there, and I got a nod. I got one of
Got a
those
nod?
nods. That was what I got. But that was it. That was my encounter with the Queen.
How interesting. I mean, not many people can say, "I got to cook for the queen," right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So if you think about that person that you were then to the person that you are now, what's
yeah.
the biggest shift within you?
Yeah, I suppose I'm just a lot more chilled, a lot more
Yeah.
relaxed, and a lot more go with the flow. Whereas then I was sort of, I wouldn't say I was sort of aggressively chasing a career and a position in terms of, you know, who I wanted to be. My ego was sort of more important than anything else. I think there's been a sort of a mellowing of that, and I'm now sort
Mm,
of more about, you know, how do I help others? You know, how do I just impart wisdom and knowledge to help others, you know, enjoy their journey and
yeah.
enjoy their life?
And you do that through more than just coaching, may I say. Like I know when we spoke to you about Christmas last year that you're off and you go and cook for a lot of people that don't get to have a Christmas meal and they get to have a meal because you cook. And if you think about even that, like these people who you serve on Christmas are getting someone that has cooked for the Queen.
Mm, it always gets
Right?
mentioned.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been I can't quite believe it's been an hour. I say that every single time. So what do you hope that someone listening to this who feels a bit stuck right now takes from your story?
Mm. Yeah, I think sort of to know that there's hope and to
Yeah.
know that there's options and opportunity, and there is someone out there who can help you, who will help you, and just be open to that. Just be, you know, willing to let somebody in to help you. You know, you're not alone. It's not sort of a case where, you know, you've got to fight this battle yourself. A problem shared is a problem halved, as they say, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So think about sort of what it is that you need that can help you just get out of that space that you're in right now, because there is a much better space out there. This is a great world that we're on, you know.
Yeah.
Paul and I talk about taking a higher perspective, a bigger look at things. And our little saying is sit on the moon. If you
Yeah.
sat on the moon and you look back at this planet, everything that you're thinking is a big issue would be insignificant.
Yeah, that's 100%, isn't it? You start to recognize how many of
Absolutely.
those thoughts are perhaps not so good. But
Mm,
I love that, and I think that's so true that anyone at any time can choose to reinvent themselves, and there are people around there who are able to help with that. So it's been a beautiful, beautiful hour. One of the things that I like to do is finish just with a little series of popcorn questions, and I always say they're small, but they're big, and whatever comes out comes out. So I'll run you through those first. So
yeah.
what brings you most alive right now?
I'm going to say alignment. And I mentioned it earlier, but it's about when I'm aligned with, you know, my purpose and making myself happy, being in joy, helping others do the same, serving people. All of that, you know, really lights me up. You know, when
Yeah.
I'm running a program, a course, or when I'm coaching somebody, that's when I'm lit up. You know, I'm like a light bulb. I'm on fire.
Well, I think you're a light in the world, that's for sure. So what would your bravest self say to you about this chapter of your life?
I think enjoy it. You know, I've worked
Yeah.
really hard. I've challenged myself throughout my entire life, and that recognition of time to slow down, time to appreciate, smell the roses, just share and care and, you know, be a good human being.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So, what's something small but powerful that you do that helps you feel more like yourself?
I think I'd say like the walk for wisdom stuff that we do,
Yes.
because it ticks so many boxes in that sphere that I operate in
Yeah.
terms of connection, in terms of caring, helping people, putting myself out there as well, challenging me as well as challenging others in those conversations. That to me is something that really sort of, I say it just works for me. I love it. Absolutely
Yeah.
love it.
I love it too. Uh,
Yeah, I hate when I miss it. I couldn't make it yesterday, but I hate when
yes.
I miss it.
Yeah.
I had to ring Mike and ask him what his talk was about and who was there and all those sorts of things. So that
Yeah.
FOMO is a real thing for me when it comes to walking wisdom.
And the last question, if you could gift every person one reminder, what would it be?
I think it would be to just take a moment to just think about your life and the impact that you have
Mm,
on others, with others, and that you are special, that you are unique, and that this is your life, and it's only the one life. We don't get a second chance. We don't get to come back and replay. We don't get to edit,
mm,
unfortunately. It's just this is what it is. And how do you make the most of that and just be grateful, appreciative, and just live it for the
yeah,
best way that you possibly can?
very wise. Very, very wise. Tony, it has been an absolute pleasure to meet with you on the
Yeah.
Midlife Unfiltered podcast. Thank you so much for saying yes and for showing up and showing us all and just talking about the whole realm of conversation that we have talked about today.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure, Margie, and you make it so easy. And when we spoke about this before, I was so excited, so thrilled just to be asked to share some of this and just to have that conversation with you. So I think what you're doing here is fantastic, and I know that there's so many people that are going to benefit from what you do and the way that you do it as well. So well done.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in to Midlife Unfiltered. I hope today sparked something meaningful and reminded you of what's possible in this season of life. If this episode lifted you up, share it with someone who could use the reminder. Subscribing will make sure that you're notified when a new episode is released, and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify also helps more people discover our little corner of midlife truth-telling. You can always reach out through Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. I love hearing from women who are walking this path with me. Interested in working with me? You'll find everything you need at margitcruise.com. And remember, midlife isn't an ending. It's your invitation to feel more alive than ever. See you next week. And now the legal stuff. The content in this podcast is provided for general information and inspiration only. It does not constitute medical, legal, or psychological advice, nor is it a substitute for independent professional care. Margit Cruz is not a registered health professional. You are responsible for your own choices and outcomes and should always seek advice from an appropriately qualified professional.